Folks at the Mississippi State University and University of Florida Deer Labs, we really enjoy our college basketball and March Madness, and we're really passionate about our deer and everything deer. So we're combining these two pleasures today in a fun series of shows patterned after March Madness, where we let the adult bucks at the MSU Deer Research Facility decide on their favorite forages. Our bracket includes 32 forages broken into 4 regions. Each region is a different category of forage. We'll travel down the road to the final forage with 4 shows, each highlighting one of the regions, ending in a final showdown. Later shows will highlight browse, vines, and forbs, while today's show covers food plots and mineral stumps. Each show will include a guest host, and today we are joined by renowned author and TV show personality from the Mossy Oak world, Ronnie "Cuz" Strickland. Ronnie, thanks you for coming and joining us today.
Well, I feel a little overwhelmed. You know, I went online to try to find this bracket in Las Vegas, and I couldn't find it. But what I did find was my name, and it said I was a 90-1 underdog. But I'm very interested.
90-1. I might have to take that
bet. This is brilliant. I'm excited. I can't wait to see the videos.
Well, Cuz, thank you. And let me just go ahead and address it. As far as we know, we're not related unless it goes way, way, way back. We just share the last name.
Yeah, we are not related, and I understand y'all don't know the outcome of this either. So we're all kind of working in the dark.
Yeah, that's the fun of it right there.
And this is a true case, Bronson and Cuz. This is a great example of superior genetics.
Yeah, and inferior genetics. I completely agree.
I said earlier, I feel like I'm bringing a pickup team to play the 1995 Chicago Bulls looking at that bracket right there.
Yeah. Well, in fact, all of our regional brackets contain top-rated forages. There's no bad team among any of these forages. It's really a battle of the best against the best. Bronson, Scott Van Pelt Strickland, and Marcus Lashley are going to break down today's bracket for us. Guys, tell us your keys to the game.
Yep, let's bring up some of the species profiles, and we'll work through them real quick and talk about kind of why we think they're really good. Number 1 is soybeans. And this forage, you know, is very, very popular, one of the most popular warm season food plot forages. It is so popular to the chagrin of all of our agricultural producers across the nation is that deer really, really love this plant. And it's kind of an ice cream food plot plant. And when you look at the content with the phosphorus, the crude protein, the low amount of fiber, it's really no surprise that it's so popular.
Yeah, in fact, Bronson, on that soybeans, it is so desirable, I guess, for deer. If you plant it in small plots, they often will kill it because they like it so much.
Yeah, so I like to say they love it to death. They love it so much.
Yeah, exactly. They will literally eat it to death.
All right, our next is alfalfa. And alfalfa is a really high quality forage, probably not as prominent in the Southeast as it is in the Midwest, but I've heard so many people over the years make statements like, you know, I've seen deer walk through white oak acorns. I've seen them walk by soybeans to go to alfalfa. I wish I had more personal experience growing alfalfa in Mississippi, but I'm really not a good enough farmer to do it with the soils. And another thing about alfalfa, it's so good. Disease loves alfalfa, insects love alfalfa, and of course, deer really, really love it. So it's another outstanding forage.
Yeah, Bronson, this is actually the one that I probably have the least experience with for some of the same reasons, but I think of it as an exceptional forage. And I hear the same thing from folks up in the Midwest and upper Midwest in particular, talk about how much deer love this. And we, you know, sort of like a high maintenance plant in the South, there aren't many varieties that do really well here, but there are a couple. And the one that we selected for this trial was one of the local varieties that does pretty well in Mississippi. So really great forage. Excited to see how that performs.
Okay, our next is white clover, and probably maybe wheat or something like that. But I was trying to think what deer food plot forage probably has the greatest longevity in the history of food plots, and I bet white clover is right up there, number 1 or number 2. So it's been planted for a really long time. It's a perennial. So get it established, take care of it. It's going to be there for a long time. Why has it had so much staying power in the southeast and the east? Because it's really, really good. The phosphorus content is outstanding. Crude protein, while it's growing, can be over 30%. The fiber is low. So no reason this is a top quality forage for deer.
Yeah, it's tried and true, no doubt. And deer love it. No question about it.
And our last food plot forage we're going to evaluate is red clover. And despite the pink blooms, a lot of people mistake that, but that is indeed red clover. It's a little bit different. It's not an annual clover like, say, crimson. It's not a perennial clover like white clover. It's a biennial clover. So typically you're going to get 2 years, and in some contexts you can get 3 or 4 years. But we generally think of it as a biennial forage. One thing that is really unique about it and makes it special for food plots for deer, it's the latest maturing clover. What does that mean? If you compare that with something like crimson that may mature in April, you're going to get a maturity sometimes into June and later. So it has staying power, producing forage on into the summer. That's why it's really, really important for a mix. And of course, it's a clover. It tastes good. And again, all those same attributes, very high crude protein, fiber is low. So just an outstanding forage. And with that, we will move now to mineral stumps. And Marcus, I'll let you take the lead. This is kind of your baby. Why don't you talk us through, first of all, what are mineral stumps?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, Bronson. And first, I want to give you some context. So we just talked about food plots, and you may be wondering, why do we have mineral stumps in with food plots? And there are a couple of reasons. One, we're trying to think about things in this bracket that you as a land manager can do to enhance deer forage on your property. So obviously, we've been using food plots to augment it for available nutrition for deer for a long time. But another thing that we developed in the deer lab years ago was this idea of mineral stumps. And basically what you're looking at is a figure that I created to demonstrate what's going on in the plant. Essentially, if you take a tree like a blackgum or dogwood, some of these that we have in the bracket, if you look at the leaf quality of that, some of them are good, some of them not so good. Deer like to eat some, But if you go in and top kill that with a chainsaw or with prescribed fire, you end up in this situation like we're looking at here, where you have this really developed rootstock and not that much vegetation above the ground. The plant responds to that by storing more dense nutrients in the leaves. And because it's in the reach of deer and more densely nutritious, they tend to like it a lot. So it sort of super packs that nutrient into the leaves. And what we see is deer preference for a given species increases substantially. So let's look at the first one. So we have blackgum, and this one is a really cool plant. It's one of those that tends to be pretty high preference, even when it's just a seedling. But when you top kill that plant with fire or with a chainsaw, the nutritional quality of it increases substantially. And this is one of those plants that it gets so desirable that it's pretty rare to find one when it's a mineral stump that isn't browsed heavily. So let's look at the next one. This one, I think it was important for us to put red maple in this, and that's because this is one of those forages that you commonly see in the deer diet, but we don't normally think of it as being a high preference plant. It's just something that's widely available, or you may have a different maple species where you're at, but it tends to show up in the diet a lot, but not necessarily preferred. However, we use this as the example, and this is where a lot of the data that I collected with graduate students in the deer lab, we collected it on this species, and it was kind of shocking because when we top killed this plant and created the mineral stump, it resprouted vigorously, and the nutritional quality became comparable to a lot of our food plot forages, and so did the selection. So it's really exciting to see that happen. We took, red maple, this run-of-the-mill, middle-of-the-road forage, and turned it into something that was highly preferred, which is pretty cool.
Marcus, I remember when we cleared an area, we were making a food plot on one of our demo areas, and we had just cleared this area, and of course we top killed a couple trees, and then we planted our food plot, and I still vividly remember this stump sprout, this mineral stump of red maple, and there in the same space we had a mineral stump and we had a food plot, and the deer were showing just as much preference for that mineral stump. That was really an aha moment for me with that.
Yeah, that it's been pretty amazing over the years working with a whole bunch of different species now, watching this play out and getting all the feedback from a lot of our followers that they're using this technique and enhancing forage and seeing the same things on a variety of species. So pretty cool. And I remember that exact time that you're talking about. It really was a game changer in the way I thought about deer forage, at least. Let's look at the next one. Okay, so the Osage Orange, some of you are probably familiar with this as a living fence, maybe, or is that tree that looks really ragged out in the pasture. It's also commonly used for bow wood. Probably not commonly thought of as an exceptional deer forage. However, if you think back, we were all thinking about this. When you have an Osage Orange available, any leaves that deer can reach, it commonly will show a browse line on it. And the other thing is it resprouts really vigorously. And this is a picture actually showing you one that we created a mineral stump. And all of a sudden it became a really highly desirable forage. The nutritional quality increased substantially, and we see really heavy use on it. Another really cool thing about this plant is there aren't that many that have a chemical defense and a mechanical defense. So this one, if you take that horse apple, that's what I called it growing up, and you broke that up, it has this white milky sap in it, and it'll get all sticky all over your hands. Probably don't recommend doing that, but trust me, that happens. That's actually an anti-herbivory defense, and it's really costly to the plant to maintain that. It also has thorns on it, which are also costly. And that tells me that this plant is investing all of that energy into not being eaten. That's probably because there are things that like to eat it. So I think this might be one of those sleeper plants that nobody's thinking about, but it might sneak up on us.
And without fail, Marcus, whenever you're around a food plot and there's an Osage Orange, you're going to see a browse line on it. So no doubt deer love it. No
question. So the last one, we picked dogwood. That's one that's really commonly available. We had a particular species available to us, which we gave you a slide. By the way, if you haven't already, we have these profiles available to you. You can go and click on the link, and we have more information and some of the same things we're talking about here in those. But dogwood was another one that stump sprouts really well. I've seen it time and time again when we were using prescribed fire. You'll have all these things resprouting, including dogwoods in that plant community, and without fail, they're almost always browsed heavily. And this is another one that I think of when I think of a sleeper. This isn't one that you normally would point to as a really high quality forage, but when you top kill that plant and it's resprouting, it definitely gets used heavily. So I'm curious to see how that plays out in this trial.
And it's found throughout the U.S. So just about everybody that hunts deer is going to have access to a species of dogwood.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, guys, thanks for that highlight, a brief description of our bracket today. And so let's see now, what do our experts think? Bronson, let's go to you for your choice. Which of these 8 is going to lead the pack?
Well, these are all good. I'm hesitant. I'm sitting here and talking myself into and out of different ones, but I got to go with soybean. I guess I have seen time and time again where they have loved it to death in a food plot setting. or whether it be on calls from ag producers dealing with soybean damage. And I don't know. I just tend to think of it as truly the ice cream plant that if it is accessible to deer, they're going to take advantage of it. So my pick is soybean.
It's a good, solid pick.
Marcus?
They definitely love it to death. So with my pick, I'm the same way, Bronson. I mean, all of these forages are great ones. And I don't want everybody to think that just because one doesn't win, that it isn't a champion plant, because we picked these for a reason, because they all are. I thought soybeans would kind of be an obvious one, Bronson, so I didn't actually select that one. I was thinking about this more from an ecological standpoint. The one that I decided to do, I also needed to stick to my guns with the mineral stumps. I decided the Mineral Stump Blackgum, and wanted to show y'all some pictures for why I came to that conclusion. I decided on this. So this is actually Blackgum. One of the graduate students that helped us on the project sent one of these pictures on the right here. That's Jacob Dykes. So thanks, Jacob, for helping us with this. But we were out in the field on a stump that we had created, and what you're looking at, he's standing behind it, is this enormous bushy, shrubby structure, right? This blackgum was getting browsed so heavily that it literally built a fence around itself, so that big stem in the middle that's blocking Jacob was able to grow out of the browse pressure, which I just thought was fascinating. If a plant is getting browsed so heavily that it needs to build a fence around itself, out of itself, to get out of the browse trap, I need to pick it. That's what I thought. And here's that same plant during the growing season. You can see it's gotten up into the mid-story, but it's still shaped like an hourglass, literally, because of all the heavy deer browsing on it. So for me, I've got to go with the Mineral Stump Blackgum.
That's pretty good, Marcus. Pretty good.
Makes a lot of sense. Cuz?
Again, I feel like I'm bringing a knife to a gunfight, but I do have some experience in the whitetail world, especially filming television, stuff like that. And although you don't see this plant a lot in the Southeast, I have seen it grown successfully down here. And it was down north of Jackson, and the farmer had a pivot. And I'm assuming he kept this plant cool and everything. But when you see this plant out west, I have seen wildlife go through a lot of other things to get to it. So I got to pick alfalfa. Now, I don't know if our deer down here have ever seen it or ever tasted it, but there's got to be something in it that they like. So I'm throwing my hat in the alfalfa ring just to see where it lands.
It's a good choice, Cuz. I've seen some great alfalfa fields over in the Delta, western Mississippi, and the deer love it out there.
Yes, sir.
I'm not going to go with that one, though. I'm going to have to go with kind of my buddy Bronson there. And my keys to the game here are protein content, phosphorus content, and digestibility. And of the 8 choices we have today, as much as I love mineral stumps too, Marcus, it has to be soybeans. That's the key. It's the top or near the top in all 3 of those categories. And if you've got high digestibility, a lot of protein, a lot of phosphorus, I just can't see how a deer would not choose for that forage.
Steve, have you ever taken a bite of a soybean leaf?
No, I can't say as I have.
I actually have, and it's really fuzzy and pubescent. I don't think I'd want to eat that. I want one of those smooth blackgum leaves.
Well, I don't think I'd like to eat an acorn either, but I know the deer love it.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you boil it, I'll eat it.
Well, folks, we've had our picks. We've learned about our brackets. Let's run a little video, and this study was done in early summer, so we're showing it now. Realize that these bucks with growing antlers, that's not yesterday's video. We put out all of these plants, and you see 2 sets of 8. We did not want to restrict the bucks from which plant they had access to. Afterwards, a graduate student, in this case Don Chance, is weighing the bags and seeing how much of each forage was eaten. And they all weighed the same. They were all chopped up to the same size. And at the end, we let the deer decide which one did they eat the most of. And our winner from this bracket, that advances to the final forage is soybeans.
Soybeans. Well, I'll be dog.
You can't
guess
bet
I
against soybeans,
yeah.
man.
I should have caveated what I said earlier when I was working in Tennessee for my master's I was working on diet selection with deer, and I decided I'd make it a point to take a bite of everything I could prove a deer took a bite of.
Uh-huh.
Most of the things they took a bite of I didn't like. In fact, almost everything, and it often was something fuzzy or something that was really sour. So
You need to have a rumen, I guess, Marcus, for that to maybe taste a little bit better.
Yeah, maybe some saliva that binds tannins, those sorts of things are probably useful when you're eating plants.
And Steve, you brought up a good point. I failed to mention, there's so many food plot forages we could have chosen, but we had to pick what was available during that time of the year that we ran the trial. So that was early summer. And so we used those different warm season plants, and then that late maturing clover, the red clover, and then a perennial clover, white clover. That was the basis for selecting those food plot forages that time of year. And then similarly for the mineral stump. So just a little bit of background of why we selected those.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to see what else won. I was surprised on that one, but not really. I mean, I think soybeans are a pretty strong forage, and everybody gives them credit. So we probably had quite a few people pick that one, I'm guessing. I may have been the only one with black.
That was my first look. When I looked at that, I said soybeans has got to be it. And I was like, that's just too obvious. I forgot I was dealing with Yankee deer versus Southern deer.
Yeah, I don't know what to eat up there.
They hadn't been to that ice cream alfalfa bar yet, but soybeans is that was kind of my go-to. But sticking with my choice, I thought it was a good one.
And it was, because like we said, all of these are great forages. And one of the things we emphasize at our deer labs is there is no silver bullet when it comes to food plots. There's no silver bullet in terms of forage. What we promote is a diverse habitat with a lot of different species in different stages of growth. And as we've talked about in some of our podcasts, the key is to provide a diverse habitat, and those deer will figure out what they need and when they need it. And if you provide it, they will come and take advantage of it.
Yeah, the important thing is to provide them the choice. Let them choose what they need, and the only way you can do that is to provide them the choices.
Now, I'm afraid that there's going to be a run on soybean seed now after this show.
I already ordered mine.
Roundup ready. I'm all about it. But anyway, I got to tell you guys, number one, the MSU Deer Lab is the bar. When you travel around, this is another creative, awesome, entertaining idea. And we were saying earlier, it's good to entertain and educate at the same time. And I just got me an education. It's going to cost me some money because those Roundup Ready soybeans are a little pricey. Now, no.
Yeah.
Well, cuz we appreciate you taking the time. Thanks so much. We're just, again, trying to provide some education, have some fun. We appreciate you spending some time with us. So thank you.
Thank you for letting me be on this panel. That was an honor. And I'm gonna keep up with this. I promise you.
Great. And folks that are watching this show, if you liked today's show, share it with your friends. Like us if you're new to our Facebook posts or the all those other social media outlets that we talk about that I don't know anything about. And join us for our next show as we travel down the road to the final forage. Thanks for joining us.